Hi, everyone. My name is Max Young. I'm the CEO of Capital BPM. We are a platinum partner with Camunda, and we are the partner of the year for 2024 and 2025 for the entire American continent. I'm here with Dan Kies. We're going to talk a little bit about process and automation and AI and the insurance industry. Dan, would you please be kind enough to introduce yourself?
Yeah, congrats on the partner of the year last 2 years. That's fantastic. And from a personal perspective, I've known you and I've known about you for a long time, and you've had a great career along different clients that I've worked with and been at. And congratulations. So Dan Kies from Camunda. I am a director in the Center of Excellence for Insurance, which means that I work in North America across all lines, enabling the carriers to do things like create business cases, create demos, understand the different agentic orchestrations that are possible. So it's my job to bring those to market and also at the same time help grow the sector as a whole with Camunda. So thank you for having me on today.
Thanks, Dan. So, Dan, let's just jump right in. Where are some of the places that you're really excited about applying process and automation, especially with Camunda, in order to help customers solve problems? What are some of the areas that you've sort of focused on?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think of insurance companies, carriers in three ways. They process claims, they all do underwriting, and then everything else. And there's a lot in the everything else bucket.
Yeah,
But the amount, if you look at your average insurance company out there, if they're doing $50 billion in premium, they're doing near that in claims, right? They're doing 45 billion or something in claims. Looking at their combined ratio. So trying to improve the combined ratio as a whole means we have to reduce claim costs and have better, more improved, but risk focused underwriting, right? So we don't want to just underwrite business just to grow the business.
mhm,
And if you look at claims specifically, I think great areas in there include fraud is a great, case for agentic orchestration. On the underwriting side, core underwriting is really important as well because a lot of the underwriters that are out there, and there's not enough underwriters, AI is not going to take over that role. We need to make them more productive and better off being able to have, like, if you look at a commercial underwriter, for example, there's 1,000 different data sources they could look at. They don't have time to look at each one, and they're under the gun to provide a quote so that the agent can make their commission. I think that's really an area where we could help people, we could help the customer experience. And, that brings me to the third point. I look at all the carriers that are doing AI work,
mhm.
but where's the AI agent for the little guy that just needs, insurance? Because there's 100 companies that I could go to for my insurance in the U.S.
Right.
Well, who's going to give me the best rate? Who's going to not go bankrupt? Who's going to have the best coverage? That's where I really like to see. I haven't seen anybody attacking this market yet, but whoever does that is going to get rich.
So, Dan, I've got two questions for you. The first, you said that there are a couple of places where agentic orchestration in particular makes sense. I'd like you to double click on that. Why does it particularly make sense as opposed to more traditional sort of cast iron processes? And the second question that I should ask, second question in a bit. Answer that one first.
Sure. Let's talk about fraud. So fraud, for example, if you had, the traditional, I worked at a workers' compensation fund in the IT department, and we would do the analytics on fraud. And it really would be case by case. And the claims adjuster would sort of have to volunteer and say, in a fraud meeting once a month, I think this person over here, this seems like fraud. Okay, we're not going to do the investigation this month. 6 months later. Okay, now we're going to do the investigation on it. And then the fraud investigators get involved and they have to, okay, we're going to open up this form. We're going to check this over here. We might have to follow some laws like call their employer and say, hey, we are looking at this case for fraud. Things that are very manual and disconnected. Where in the new world of all the different data sources that are out there, there's many other things that you can look at. You can look at credit reports. You could look at, drone footage. You could look at, hey, is there a cluster going on with certain providers? But your average fraud investigator, fraud investigation is a very specific skill, and there's not enough fraud investigators. They can only perform so much fraud. So we want them to be able to perform more fraud with a higher level of accuracy and precision. And if we do that, that will lower the overall cost of claims, and that money will go back to the people that are the policyholders.
Makes sense. So basically, what you're saying is the ability to do something like MCP, where we're sort of dynamically injecting new sources, new opportunities for collecting data, makes it really sort of helpful to use Agentic. The second question I have for you is, why should insurance companies be looking at tailored solutions? Why not? There are a bunch of companies that make a lot of money selling sort of industry specific solutions for fraud, for, first notice of loss, for a bunch of these things. Why should they consider tailored solutions? What's the crux of how you know whether you want something out of the box or whether you want something that can sort of adjust?
Yeah, it's going to, the answer is going to be it depends on the use cases and what the business driver is, right? And if you have a carrier that has, $1 billion in written premium, they're going to have a lot different needs than the carrier that is a State Farm or Geico or somebody like that, where, like if you look at the amount of lines of insurance that
Mhm.
some companies like that run, I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of products, let alone before you're getting into annuities. And everything is different at the state level. So the needs are going to vary based on where they see being able to improve the market the most. But if we can improve the market as a whole, we have to lower the cost of insurance for companies, for individuals, and have it because the price has gone up substantially in insurance in the last few years. It's expected to be a $3 trillion GDP in 2 or 3 years.
You were
So
telling
if we
that.
can improve, the improvements won't always be the same. So I think we have to right fit for the right companies, the right solutions. And it's going to be different. It's going to be organizations like yourself, Camunda. There's going to be stuff from the main players like Guidewire, Duck Creek. But it just depends on the scenario and where we can save the most money and do the right thing while keeping track of the regulations and the
Yeah.
requirements in the regulatory market.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you. I think that when there's a carrier that needs to be able to do something idiosyncratic, something that is sort of their special sauce, the way they do it, that's not the way that everyone else does it. I think a tailored solution makes sense, right? I think when you have an innovative idea that you want to sort of bring to market, right? Or when you have growth projections that may not, maybe the vendor that you're working with doesn't have what you want on their roadmap for another 24 months. That's an eternal
Yeah.
world we live in, right? So I
Do
think
you
that,
see that? That's really interesting what you said. So you're touching upon new products. You're talking about risk management.
yes, sir.
Maybe things that are affect the actuaries. So you seem to think not only on the big systems like on the claim systems, but also on the things that are really the differentiators.
Yes, sir. We in the business world, as you know, we always talk about things like opportunity risk, right? Lost opportunity. But I always think about opportunity. And what I mean by that is that because of what's happened with AI and automation, there's an opportunity to solve problems quickly and to accelerate toward your goals quickly, which I think brings about new opportunities. And I hate to be the person that has the opportunity in front of me and doesn't have the tooling to take advantage of it, right? And I don't think you get there with a cast iron solution that, has a product update every 24 months, right? I don't think that's how you get there anymore. I think that way of thinking um, is horses, and we are no longer, your competitors are not riding horses anymore, right?
I
They're
th
riding.
I think, and the regulatory changes support your point of view. So the regulatory changes, it is now easier, thanks to the NAIC and the state regulators that are out there. It's
Yes.
easier to create a new insurance product. If we don't have new insurance products, that means it's just the same old stuff. We have to have niche things that fit, certain demographics. Maybe in healthcare, that's diabetes,
Mhm.
or some specific disease that needs special programs. We have to have insurance that matches that so people can have the right fit.
Yep.
Um, if you look at what happened in California last year, fire insurance is impossible to get. I don't want to say impossible, but it's very hard to get fire insurance in California right now. So it goes to the state fund for that, which creates hey, at least there's insurance there. There's something to fall back on, but it's a non-competitive market. So
Yeah.
the regulators are supporting what you're saying by saying we will accept higher rates for newer products if it helps the constituents of this state.
Yeah.
So I like your point of view on that.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine being on the other side of it, right? Let's say you're an insurance company and you want to make changes because regulations have changed and because your
Yeah.
risk is higher and you just can't execute. Like you literally, you don't have anyone to call. No one's going to put that feature into the thing that you want. So you're taking on, risk that doesn't justify the cost and you're stuck. That seems very dangerous to me.
And now all the actuaries they have, I mean, these are everyone that's an actuary that's, coming up has
Yeah.
data science degrees and
Yeah.
AI and ML, and they look at these data sets.
Yeah.
And if the data that's going into them is a little bit wrong because there is too much fraud going on, or we're missing payments,
Yeah.
or hey, any car accident under 25,000, we just pay it. That's the kind of stuff like if we can change those models through agentic orchestration,
Mhm.
then we can improve the market as a whole. So there's lots of opportunities out there.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more specifically. One of the models that we of Capital BPM have built and we actually sell through the Camunda marketplace is a first notice of loss. And you actually told me something interesting. I knew the size of that market. It's big, but I think you just told me that it's like 238 or $336 billion a year, right? That's
For
monstrous.
personal auto claims in the US. And
Yeah.
that would include the amount paid on the claims,
Hmm.
for the cars or injuries, and also the processing for it.
Yep.
And if we can do anything to avoid more claims, let's do that first because safety is key.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that that's something that I want to show you here. So one of the solutions that we put out into the Commander marketplace is the ability to use agentic orchestration in order to be able to drive first notice of loss, right? So let me show you this. Um, I'm going to wrestle with my technology now. Let's see how
That's a
I
great one
do.
to go after first because it happens in every claim if somebody's not familiar with first notice of loss.
Yes,
It's
sir.
that first time you contact the insurance company and say, hey, something happened,
Yep.
you know. And I hate talking about injuries and loss, but this happens every day across the field. And now they have to collect documentation from you. They have to get a recording or witness statements, police records, all that stuff. It's very complicated. It's probably the most complicated thing in all of insurance. And
It's
people have been going
exhausting.
after this for a long time.
Yeah, so the way that can you see my screen? Can you see a process diagram?
I can.
Okay, so this is the default first notice of loss process that we put in there, and it has about 30 of the standard sort of activities that you have to do. The thing that's interesting about this is because of Camunda's unique ability to sort of seamlessly do agentic orchestration, it's a native ability in the tooling. What happens is that the ability to draw all of the nuance that articulates when you go from intaking a claim to, I don't know, validating data and consistency to doing fraud detection or whatever. You would normally draw that, and it would be a very complicated process. Imagine all the gateways and the timers and the events and the escalations and so on. It becomes this super complicated thing. And what inevitably happens is the business just kind of looks at it and goes, this is too much. I'm going to throw it at IT and we're just going to fight when something breaks about whose fault it is, right? The thing that I really like about the way that Camunda deals with this is that it sort of has this ability to have the AI stand over the entire process and go, now we go to this step, and now we go to this step, and now we go to this step, based on context and history. That ability to teleport to where you want to be rather than go through these winding paths, I think is really critical. You put that together with Camunda's native ability to be able to parse documents with IDP, right? You can literally have Camunda build out a document parsing solution in minutes. Right? You give it a document, it figures out most of how you map that to like a data field that represents a canonical representation, and then you start putting that in. And what you get is this ability to very quickly start achieving value on the processes that you're doing rather than having to wait, 6 months, 9 months before you put something out into production. The example that we have here, you'll notice, there are a bunch of boxes in blue, and then there are a couple that are in red. We use Camunda's native ability to, very clearly indicate legend colors. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say, okay, first we'll start out with the checkmark process. Human beings saying, I did this, I did this, I did this. Then we identify the highest value of those. And this is something that can, frankly, go to production in a matter of weeks, barring bureaucratic architectural issues. Once this is in place, then you start color coding. You start saying, this is my first most important thing that I want to automate. This is my next most important thing that I want to automate, and so on and so forth. So you're sort of building the value as you go along rather than waiting for the end. And you don't necessarily automate the things that are low value. There's one particular activity that you've got to have in there, but it happens 2% of the time. It does not deserve the same amount of attention and money and time that you give to something like fraud detection, right? So
How
for
would you, I hate to interrupt you, but with what you
yeah,
just said, how would you enable that with all like your experience around event streaming
yeah,
and asynchronous? Like, how would you enable that? Would you to know that one of those boxes only happens 2% of the time? Because you're going
yeah.
to realize that in some sort of AI or ML research, maybe.
Well,
What are your thoughts on how you get there?
you don't even have to do that, right? Well, you can, Camunda has that natively. You just go into optimize and you actually look at the heat map that indicates this. Let me just bring this up while we're sort of talking about it. Um, uh, Camunda heat, right? Can you see my screen with
Yeah,
with the heat map on it? Like
sure.
Camunda does this out of the box, right? It actually maps out the paths to your process, where your traffic is, where it isn't. You don't have to guess. You will know by running your process. And
So you're
this,
doing it with native,
yes, sir.
native instrumentation within Camunda.
Yes, sir. I am a lazy engineer and I like to do things the easy way. So for me, what I really want to see is where are we actually going, right? What are we actually doing? Being incredibly practical and very focused on dollars and cents and money and value. Because those are the things that tell for people. That's how people get to keep their jobs. That's how they get to buy their kids Christmas presents. And I like being a part of that solution. So I use Camunda's native capabilities to be able to do orchestration, to be able to do document data extraction, to be able to have historical data about what's actually happening in the system. And I use this cross-referenced with the customer's input on, what their SMEs see as being valuable and what's coming down the pipe to put it all together. The other thing that we do that I think is potentially interesting is if you look at like the AI literature, there is sort of a big dichotomy between um, expert systems, which are basically what you and I would think of as DMN, traditional business decisions, and AI systems, right, which are sort of these intelligence systems that say, this is your next best step, and this is your next best step. I think that the answer is somewhere in the middle. I think the right thing to do is when you have explicit algorithms that articulate out what the next step is from the previous step, you put that into an expert system. You actually write that as a decision table, right? Something like this. If you're at the initiate claim activity, and then the next thing would be to capture the claim activity intent, but only if the person's, I don't know, trustworthiness score is under 600, right? Or they've had three claims of fraud in the past 2 years. And you literally start putting that into Camunda's ability to, have things like, fraud claim count, right?
And this is the blending of the deterministic and probabilistic
Yes, sir.
workflows
That's right. So
orchestrated.
you're basically telling the AI, hey, you have latitude. And you can look at history and you can look at the trends and you can look at all this other stuff. But also, here's sort of the clear rules that you should follow. It's a little bit like having a babysitter in the house and giving them an agenda. Hey, the kid, should finish their homework by 7:30. They can watch TV until 8:15. Then they've got to scrub up and get ready for bed. You're still giving the babysitter latitude to change things as they need to. But you're saying, all things being equal, try to do it this way, right? That I think is the right balance between how all these systems work together. And you take that and you
I
put,
love that analogy. So the babysitter has the things they can do. They can take them to the park. They can give them a pudding. But they can't use an iPad or they can't,
exactly,
you know,
exactly. Or
I
if
love
they
it.
want to use an iPad or they want to take NyQuil or whatever, call the parents, right? And
There you
this
go. Yeah. Send a text to mom.
That's right. And this is something that we always do. So this is how we sort of document our processes. Whenever we generate processes, we have some plugins that automatically update it to like your document store, like your Confluence or DocuSource or whatever, so that the business can actually see what's happening and why it's happening. Everything from, what the particular steps are to the data structures and like the entities and the relationships that they have with each other, even down to like, the sequence diagrams that explain what's happening underneath a particular invocation. The reason we put all this together is because we think that business is a critical component of business process modeling, right? Business is a key component. You can't exclude the business from the visibility of what you want to do, from the visibility of how it's happening, and from the visibility of where it needs to go. And I think that's where process modeling really comes into the picture. This ability to take Camunda's native, amazing expertise, put it together with the customer's insights about how their business should be run, put that together with visibility and control in a way that marries what's best of breed about what's happening in our automation world right now and practices that go back to the 50s from Six Sigma and Lean, and giving our customers the best opportunity in the world to succeed because God knows it's hard enough.
The standard operating procedures, which guide what people should do in certain cases, they're all documented. Like every manager, every operations team has them, especially in insurance, right? Because you have
So,
auditability and you're gonna have lawsuits and things like that. It's unavoidable. So if you don't have those procedures in place,
yes, sir.
you're at risk. So they're there, at some level. And taking those together and blending them with this, right?
Yeah.
Blending the canonical models like you have here, the process models
Mhm.
with the standard operating procedures and generating those together in a loosely coupled system like this and
Yes, sir.
allowing it to process. This is how you really reduce the time claims are open,
Yes, sir.
the amount of money that you're going to spend on the processing. You're not going to reduce the amount that a car costs in an accident.
Right.
You could, but you're going to reduce the amount of processing that it takes to pay that claim.
Yes, sir. And I think that's really sort of a key component here, right? And I'm also demonstrating this as we speak. But it is really, really important that these ideas stop just being ideas, that they become active and kinetic, right? There's got to be a philosophical bent towards action. We've got to get away from potential energy and conversation and into kinetic energy and experimentation and improvement. And by the way, what you just saw was that we actually, while I was speaking, we actually created a claim. We went through a process where we actually extracted the information from it using IDP, which is a native capacity that Camunda has. We brought back the payload, and then based on that, we decided to route it to the claim intake process, right? This is kinetic. This is something that you can get working in minutes. And then you look at it and you improve it and you improve it and you improve it. You take the technical capabilities that Camunda has, you cross-reference that with the expertise that our customers have in their own domain. You put together regulatory frameworks that come from customers, from people like us and from other industry experts within these spaces, and you do something interesting, right? That I think is cool. I like being a part of that.
Yeah, this is fantastic. It's the agent driven orchestration. It
Yes,
keeps
sir.
the people, in the loop. It removes data silos, creates cleaner pass-throughs. Everything's auditable.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
that's what people are looking for. How do you get there though? If you're a large company, you have millions of claims, you
sir.
probably have to do this. You probably have 50 different systems from spreadsheets to like big claim systems.
Yeah.
What are the first steps?
I honestly think it goes back to first principles, right? And to me, first principles are I would encourage people who are thinking about this and thinking about Camunda to hold our feet and Camunda's feet to the fire. Show me. Come and do an analysis of my process. Show me the process executing. I'll tell you what I care about. You show me that you can do it. Give us an empirical opportunity to kind of, prove that there's signal versus noise in this space. And hold us to that standard. Hold everyone to that standard, right? Invite them all. The people who are good at this are not worried about competition. They invite it. And I would say that would be the practical thing for a customer to do. The right thing to do is to have an objective criteria for executable success. So I think the key thing here is just to make sure that you're executing, that you're trying things out, that it's not theoretical, that it's practical, and that you're using, frankly, top of line tools like Camunda to actually get to where you need to be, right? It's a little bit like buying that Toyota Tundra truck. Once you buy the Toyota, you're in pretty good hands. Now you just worry about where you want to go, right? It's not going to break down on you. And that's really how I think of Camunda.
I like it. I like it. That's good. The spirit of experimentation in the world of AI is there. We have to move forward. There's too much good stuff going on out there to sit on the sidelines.
Yes, sir.
Even if it's not perfect. What's the saying? Don't let perfection get in the way of doing something.
Yeah, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I love that.
That's it.
Dan, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for making time for this. Do you wanna leave us with a final thought or something for people to consider?
Oh, yes. Thanks for inviting me on, first off. And look forward to working with you and the team at CapBPM. We have right now 100 proof of concepts going on around agentic orchestration.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going next week to InsurTech New York. Some of the
Okay.
Camunda team is going to be there. We're going to be having some fun. We're going to be meeting people. We're going to maybe making some videos like these.
Nice.
And hey, let's talk about how to make insurance better in this world.
Dan, if someone wanted to reach out and get in touch with you and try something else, what's the right way to do it? Just email you at dankeys@camunda.com.
That's perfect. That
Awesome.
or LinkedIn. I'm easy to get a hold of.
Awesome. I'll definitely put that up on the screen. Hey, thanks for making time for this. This is a lot of
Thanks so
fun.
much.
You take care. Bye.
Bye.